All right, well, with the magic of editing, it is several hours later, i.e. another day, and these are nice and hard. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the good old-fashioned X-Acto and very carefully cut the cows out of both of these and see what came best. Unfortunately, I just can't prop up and let you watch me do it. Working on that, folks, sorry. But I'm going to cut them open as carefully as I can. Excuse me, as carefully as I can. And we'll see how this goes. So keep your fingers crossed during the crossfade. And like that, our cows are free of their silicone traps. So a little difficult to break these out as I kind of expected, and that was because in here you see the legs. They have little holes in them, and there's no direct channel to get them out. So I had to be a little bit careful, more careful honestly with this one than I had to be with this one. I'll try to show you why. So I cut down the side just to sort of free it, and then the spaces here, I'm trying to pry it open just a little bit so you can see. Come on, hands. So in there, you see that where the legs had come out, and a nice cavity there. That broke them free. I put a little bit of cornstarch, just kind of dabbed it on there. You can see some of the remaining cornstarch on there to help it slip out, and it really did, with a little bit of cranking of the silicone, but it really did just kind of pop right out. And so I think when we pour the resin in there, I'm hoping, fingers crossed, for a nice approximation of our cow here. So similar to this one, I took a similar approach. You can see I kind of cut the top here down to the legs, imprecise cut, so I'll deal with that. This one, though, I got a little bit lucky. So when I pressed the silicone together, it didn't quite mold together between the legs, and so it kind of had this natural, not natural, but it kind of had this channel right there, and that was not because the silicone had broken or I cut it open. It just happened to not go together. So I'm hoping what that means is I've got a nice easy mold to deal with here, and so 2 molds to make cows with. I'm hoping it's as precise as I can get it. So now starts the next messy part. I'm going to mix. I'm trying to figure out how I want to do this. I think I'm going to start with JB Weld on this one right here, and I will start on the Alumarez on this one right here because I think it just looks, it's probably going to be easier as a mold and as a liquid when I pour it in there. A couple things just to keep in mind as you're doing molds is bubbles are always going to be a problem, so you need to do what you can to knock as many bubbles out. Usually that means tapping on it or vibrating it in some way, so the little bubbles kind of rise to the surface. The other is that space is not your friend. You want to really pack in your material to get the best resolution. And yeah, I think your material counts. So, but again, the point of the experiment is not to get a 100% casting. It's to try to use some of these techniques, specifically that Mr. Barker recommends, but I borrowed heavily from YouTube. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this rest just a little bit, let the silicone cure a little bit longer, because I don't want to put anything in here that's going to mess with the silicone mold, because it's a time-consuming process. But happy with the results so far. Of the 2 right now, I'm happier with this one because as a mold goes, I think this is going to be a little bit easier to work with because it sits up squarely. This one lays down, and you got to find some way to prop it up or maybe use a clamp to keep it where you want it. But we'll find out, and I'm glad I did this twice. I'm glad it worked out that way, because I think it's going to give me some more options. So next step, I'm going to, I guess, mix up a little bit of JB Weld and put her in there and see what we get. Okay, first one done, and royal mess is probably the best way to put that. So I mixed the JB Weld together in a little container I use pretty frequently for JB Weld, convenient, and pretty much just tried to goop it into the mold here. If you've used JB Weld before, you know it tends to be kind of sticky. It gives you a fair amount of work time. This is JB Weld Quick too, so it's designed to dry up and pretty fast. So you get maybe, I don't know, 8 to 10 minutes of work time on it. But yeah, essentially I just tried to scoop it with my little popsicle stick thing here, and just scoop it into the mold. So I guess my guiding thing was to try to push it as far forward as I could to make sure I got it into the head of the cow, and got a good mold there. And then I just kind of kept on scooping until I was running low. I let the mold close, and it kind of oozed out the side, which was kind of what I wanted, because I want to have a little bit of flash on it so that it's got a good tight mold. And it was upside down already. I don't want to play with it too much, but you can see this is the flat part that I started and I cut. And so I kind of filled it up to the top of that until it was nice and flat, and I let the flap naturally come closed, and now I've got it just sort of gravity doing its thing. And so we'll see how that comes out. I have to be honest, I'm not terribly optimistic, just because it didn't come out as clean, and I've done a little bit of molding work before, and typically the way that went, unless you really just got to get lucky, doesn't go the way you want it to. So we're going to try the resin of our Alumarez in this one. This one's going to be pretty straightforward. I'm going to mix the Alumarez up. I'm going to use the leg holes of the cow as the through point, and let it just kind of seep in there up to the point where it's level here, and let it dry, and we'll see how it goes. Now I'm going to use these neat little laundry cups, and my thanks to my loving wife for allowing me to abscond with her cups when she's done. But I'm going to take the Alumarez. We're going to do 1-to-1 mix there, and we'll recreate our cow hopefully here. So 2 different types of molds, 2 different attempts, and good experiment just to kind of test this thing out. So next step is the mix. We'll see how that goes. All right, so we got the Alumarez mixed here. We only have 2 minutes of work time, so I'm going to be quick here. I'm going to try to mix it up thoroughly. Give it a good kind of a mix, and you can see the color changed just a little bit. It got a little bit cloudy initially, and now it's kind of cleared back up. But I think that's probably just about right there. All right, so we're going to take our stick out. Sorry, I'm trying to do multiple things at once here. And then what I'm going to do is pour this into the legs. I'm probably going to need both hands to do that, so let me just skip. Okay, got it poured, and you can see we took it just above the line there. Just kind of till it, just the capillary effect kind of pushes it up. So it's supposed to be a flexible material, a flexible rosin. So I'm hoping I'll be able to kind of trim off the flashing there at the bottom. But that was a whole lot easier and a whole lot cleaner too. Overdid it a little bit on the mixture there. That's way more than I needed. I could probably have done 2 cows with what I just used, but good to know. So we'll probably do a little less next time. But okay, so I'm going to let these both set up really nicely, and we'll jump cut to the next bit here that should be nice and dry. And once again, through the magic of computer editing, you see we have our 4 cows, or maybe 4 3/4 cows. So the first one, here's our resin cow here, and this came out fairly easily, no issues really. It went in as clean as it could. I think the one thing that I would do differently this time is I forgot to put a straw of some sort, so even just something as small as this, I have to clip it off because it's a bit jammed up here. But just a little straw to let air out so that everything kind of sinks in there a little bit more readily, provides a chance for the air to escape. But firmed up very nicely. I probably gave it more time than it needed to, but as you can tell, very close to exact replica of our original cow here, and good results with the resin. And you know, for the most part, it feels same weight. I think I could probably take out a scale and determine it, but I mean, just doing the finger test here, I mean, it feels like exactly the same weight. The bottom looks nice and flat. I could probably flatten that off a little bit more, and then a little bit of a flash just to cut off, but really good results there. Option 2 with the JB weld, you can tell we're missing something, and so I think this is fixable pretty easily. I can put some more JB weld and create a head real quick and just kind of merge the two with a little bit of glue if I really wanted to, but I don't think I need to do that. The results are okay. I'm not terribly happy with these. I think a combination of just kind of the goopiness of JB Weld and the speed with which you have to get past the work time. And this one's still a little bit tacky, so the mix may not have been exactly right. So just from a standpoint of mass production, I guess, the rosin it seems to be a little easier. But I'm gonna cut this off and paint this back up. I'll see if I can't fix this guy up a little bit. He needs to dry a little bit more now that he's out of the casting. But okay, heading in the right direction though. We're getting more cows, which is great. So experiment going well. I'm gonna take next step. I'm gonna take this one, and then this one too. I'll clean it out pretty good because it looks like there's a little bit of leftovers in there. But on the good side, this did split open pretty easy, and both cows came out very easily. So from a molding perspective, the silicone cornstarch combination here really does create some reliable molds. And the more I use this one now, I think the easier it's going to get. So I'll try both of these with the rosin and see if we can't create a couple more cows. Right now we're up to 3 good solid cows, and our herd continues to grow. So I'm going to make a few more here using the same technique. No need to watch me through it. I'm going to fast forward to the next step. All right, so all done with the casting process, and as you see here, we have our newly casted flock. So I have taken a combination of things. So this one was the, just for starters here, this was the JB Weld one that it was headless, and what I did was I casted another head just to try again with JB Weld. Didn't work out real well. I ended up with no horns on this one, so I used a combination of rosin and this stuff, which I have used to good effect with other modeling stuff. This is contour putty from Testers. It does pretty well. It dries up, and when you paint it, it's indistinguishable. So I'm going to give this one a little bit of a paint job, and I have sanded down. You can't quite tell, but there's a seam. Obviously, you can see it. There's a seam right there where the head connected with the body, and sanded it down, so it's going to be a pretty good little seam. But that's also where the paint starts, with the white hits the black. And so this would really be pretty much invisible. But otherwise, it came out okay. I think what I have learned, though, is that because of JB Weld's work time and the type of molds that I put together, this one, it's just not ideal for this particular project. And you know, if it's probably, I mean, cost-wise, between JB Weld and this Alumirez, this resin stuff, I think the resin's probably a little cheaper, just, you know, per cow. But in this case, you know, I wanted to give it a try because, again, this is all about trying to test some of the processes that Mr. Barker uses. So I wouldn't say that I have found a better way, but, you know, for me, this one just worked a little better with using the resin. Certainly, I mean, obviously I got good results with the JB Weld, and it's a fairly decent cast, some holes and things here and there, but just not as good a duplication of the cow as the resin ones are. And as you can see, you know, a little bit of flash to the carve off of this one here, but it just looks like a more, I don't know, true to form duplication of the cow. So I put the two together down here, and you can kind of see these two are pretty darn close to the same. The only difference here is, so you see nice and flat on the bottom of the cow there, where we're going to attach our material down there. This obviously not so much, so we've got to take it, flatten it out. You can see here I started the process of just trying to flatten these out a little bit, but don't want to overwork them. Some of them are flatter than others. This one's a little bit better. This one's been nicely sanded down. Still a little bit of a lump there on the side you got to work through, but you can see this one's probably the best one right now. That one's nicely sanded flat. So a little bit of work on both, but I mean, frankly, given the option of the two, for me, the resin just seemed to work better. Now, as you can tell on my workbench here, obviously the resin left some debris, so I've got some cleaning up to do and some vacuuming, so certainly recommend that you use some covering plastic if you have a surface like mine that's textured. So I made a bit of a mess. I'll have to get up what I can when I can, but doesn't obviously, surface is still pretty good. here, and it's really more for keeping screws from bouncing and falling off the workstation. But for the most part, I think we're kind of where we need to be. Okay, so we've created 8 cows. We're going to do 4 brown and 4 black, and there's our flock. I'm sorry, we're going to do this one over here because this one's a little bit more black to begin with because it had some residue of the other one. To our castings, so this one, the block one that we casted, I guess, straight out of the cow and kept it fairly level, and this one's just, it was a better casting. It was just easier to use. I relied on this one for the latter 3 cows that I casted. I tried to do a couple more with this one, and they just never turned out well. And frankly, it's just because it was sort of thrown together at the last minute when I had some extra silicone. So I would say, if just process-wise you want to do this, I would go with my method over what Mr. Barker has in his book, which is a little bit more akin to this, but both created decent results. Even with the resin, this one came up pretty good, and I probably could have done this a little better than I did. So this isn't necessarily reflective of Mr. Barker's methods as much as it is just sort of how I went about doing it. But because I intend to make more cows in the future as needed for friends and things, this just is better, and I can use this probably. I'd say probably another a dozen more cows could come out of this one before the mold starts to wear out. Now, the one thing I did learn was release agents are helpful, and I started to use some of the cornstarch again towards the end, and just dabbed a little bit. So you got to be really careful with this because you'll lose some of the elements if you don't. But just dabbed a bit on the inside. You see, I just kind of cracked it open. Dabbed a bit of the cornstarch in there to make sure that the resin would release a little better. And for the most part, it did. And it just kind of came up on the surface, and I would, using my thumb, I could wipe it off. You can't really see any of the residue on it anymore. But that worked out pretty well. Anyway, so the experiment of at least casting my own cows has come to fruition here. So I have 8 cows, which is fantastic. And I don't know that I saved myself any money, but certainly saved myself or learned something new in the process. And that's kind of, to me, more important. And I mean, really, with what I have materials-wise, I could make, heck, I could probably make another 200 cows out of what's there. So next step is the painting, and you guys have seen me paint before, so I won't make you suffer through the painting process. As to the colors, I got a color match. This one a little bit better. The brown I have is a little bit actually lighter than the brown one here, but the white paint for the head, that should be pretty easy to get. This one are blacks. So I started painting this one just to play around. This is a gloss paint, just to test it out and see it. I think just looking at the difference between the gloss and the current one, I'm going to try a flat. I'm going to go straight to the flat for the remainder of the cows here and paint it. I'm going to use a rattle can because I've got it, and as much as I enjoy pulling out the old airbrush for detail work, I just don't think it's necessary on this one. So, all right, guys, well, that's where we are. We're going to take the next step and do some painting. And next thing you see, these should be painted cows. Okay, so paint job done, and I think you get the idea. Things looking pretty good. So just a few things for those of you who are a little bit more animal retentive. The castings started to degrade just a little bit over time, which they tend to do for anybody who's done these sorts of things before. I don't know if you can tell with my lighting, but as things, especially on the brown cow, as things started to move along, the left eye of the cow, so the one on your right here, started to slowly kind of disappear. Now, it came back with some of the paint, and I was able to kind of brush the paint out and still accentuate it a little bit, but on camera it's looking a little hard to see here. Not as bad with the black cows here, but certainly some differences in casting and how it all came out. But for the most part, let's see if we can get a side angle on the cows here. All of them came out pretty good. I picked kind of a reasonable facsimile of brown for our brown cows here, and they are pretty close, maybe just a shade darker. And the black, I went with a flat black, partially because what I'm going to do is take these three, put a little CRC 226 on them, and they'll gloss up just a little bit there, but just to protect our cows. I'm going to do the same with our brown cows as well. But I'll let these dry completely and cure. Next step for these is going to be putting on the bottoms of the cows, which is the, as you remember from the 970 car, that's the Shoreline Edger refills. But since we have more to do on our stockyard here, which is sitting here ready to be worked on, I figured I'd stop here with just the cows and the cow facsimile, and we'll move on to the stockyard here shortly. But this has been a pretty successful little experiment on how to home make your own silicone molds. Bring out the silicone mold here, and through the magic of silicone molding and a little bit of resin, which I think we decided was the better option, at least for this, for me, it was a little bit better. I'm sure JB Weld still works great in some other stuff. Yeah, with the Aluminite resin certainly seems to work pretty well. If you guys have some other options or other good ones, I'd like to test them out and continue to kind of play around with cows here. So if you guys have some good ideas, post them down at the bottom. Glad to hear what your choices are. But I hope this was helpful. I hope this was educational. Certainly something that was new for me, at least in the American Flyer repair realm. I've done a little bit of casting, but not very much, to where I felt like I was super comfortable. This was really, really easy, though, and I would say for a beginner, certainly well within the realm of possibility for someone who wanted to try it out. And for the costs of the molding process itself, the Aluminite was a little bit more expensive, but you could find that probably at any local hobby shop for relatively inexpensive. For me, it was about 23 bucks, 22 bucks, somewhere in there. So not too bad for a little experiment. So I hope you enjoyed this, folks, and we'll get back to the stockyard here on the next video. And for now, that's it. Thanks so much for watching.